So when we see inequalities, we always want to ask, how did this inequality emerge? Was it because someone was really good at producing goods and services? I'll give you an example of a very wealthy family in America, the Walton family. And have you ever heard of a company called Walmart? Right? They figured out a way to produce goods and services, mainly to deliver goods, good quality at very low prices, that poor people could afford high quality goods at very low prices. And they devised a system, inventory control, delivery system, and so on. They became very rich by serving the needs of millions and millions of very poor people, frankly. And they did it by offering them good quality goods at much lower prices than they had paid for in the past. So that would be a different way to become wealthy, to have more goods than I do. We can also ask another question that's worth thinking about in this context of equality and social justice. Is there any reason to think any other system would be more equal? Not, would I like it to be more equal, but as a real, rational expectation, is there any reason to expect an alternative arrangement to produce more equality? Because remember what I mentioned about intentions and consequences? They're two different things. Tell us what your intentions are. Okay, you're a nice person, you have good intentions. Tell me what incentives you will create that will change people's behavior. And then show me that that will lead to better or worse outcomes, or more or less equal outcomes, for example. Do markets create incentives to corrupt people? You hear this quite often. People say, markets corrupt people, they make them selfish. Is that true? Or is it the case that we find selfish people everywhere, and they find different ways to express their selfishness? Right? Under socialism, as it was experienced in the Soviet Union and in the Eastern Bloc, the managers of state companies had a lot of privileges not available to everyone else. They had cars, dachas, the best houses, and in the Balkans it was customary that they would, because they were all men, that their power would be transformed into other forms. I'll tell you a little bitter joke from Albania, which I spent some time in many years ago when it was communist. It has a bitter edge to it. It's funny, I think, but it's a little bitter. Albania is a Balkan country and has a very traditional Balkan mentality of power of men over women. Women traditionally were not well treated there. And under a socialist system, if you are fired from your job in the state factory, you no longer have a ration card. It's virtually a death sentence. And of course, a few words to the secret police, you could go to labor camp where you would be worked to death as a slave. So, typically, the resource manager of a state factory would be a woman, and the manager would be a man. And it was pretty common men extracted sexual favors from the women who worked for them because they didn't have much choice. So here's the joke that was told to me by some Albanian women. A manager and the head of the human resources department, the labor manager, man and a woman, go to a conference on socialist labor practices in Durrës. They take the train there, and Comrade Enver Hoxha had removed all of the seats from the trains because they were bourgeois, capitalist, and good, solid socialist workers would stand for 6 hours. So they stand there for 6 hours. They finally arrive. They go to the hotel. They check in for their rooms. Comrades, we're so sorry. There's only one room left. You will have to share a room. So they go up with their luggages, up the 4 stairs, flights of stairs with all their luggage, get to the room, only one bed. And the man turns, the manager, the boss, turns to the woman, he says, well, I see we have only the one bed. Tell me, would you rather sleep in the bed as manager and employee, or as husband and wife? And the woman says, well, what about husband and wife? Okay, good night. None of you are married, I take it. Okay? It was systematic that this would be exploited from the woman. A husband and wife would often go to bed and actually sleep. A manager and an employee did not sleep if they were going to go to bed together. That's why I say it has a bitter edge to it in the element of the joke. We find people are corruptible in every institution. People are selfish. So the question is, how do they express their selfishness? In a market, you can become rich by satisfying other people. You have to offer them something, or they won't make you wealthy. If you don't give them something they won't buy your products. But under crony capitalism, where you get special favors from the state, or the prime minister, or the ministers, or under socialism or alternative regimes, there are other ways to get what you want from other people. And it may not be through offering them something that they want and a voluntary exchange. It may be exercise of power. Do we tend to find more or less equality when markets are controlled than when they're free? And here we can look at available data, some of it is available, and correlate it with the degree of economic freedom of the market. And you typically find more economically free markets tend to have more equality, not less. And we can understand why. Unfree systems mean people prosper when they can manipulate the state to their advantage. And quite often the rewards for manipulating the state are quite enormous. So why don't we leave it at that, formulate some questions, and we can have a more interesting discussion. We're on time, or a little bit early? We're on time.
We still have about for documentation still about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Well, my watch says we started at 2:45, didn't we?
No, because we start.
Oh, okay. Well, I set mine to stop at 3:30. All right. Well, then I will make a few more comments, and then we can formulate some questions. Among the things that are worth considering then, let's take the discussion about income inequality in the United States versus Western Europe. Okay? There's a measure called a Gini coefficient, which is a numerical measure of income inequality. The United States has a higher Gini coefficient than most Western European countries. Some people have concluded, aha, this is because Western European countries have more progressive social policies, and we should emulate them, we should copy them in the United States, and it would eliminate this, lower the Gini coefficient to have a more equal society. Olaf Gersemann, who was a German economic journalist at the time with the Wirtschaftswoche, which is a business week in Germany, he's currently with the FT Deutschland. He did an interesting study called Cowboy Capitalism, a comparison of European and American economic systems. One of the things he found was the following. The United States admits far more immigrants than virtually any other country in the world. Almost as much as the rest of the world combined as legal immigrants into the country. Certainly far more than Western Europe, which has a much more restrictive immigration policy. Most of those immigrants come in with very low income and often very little skill. They don't speak English very well. They come from Central America or parts of Asia. These are not typically very highly educated people. The consequence is they come in, they're earning much, much, much below the average income. As he pointed out, you could have the same Gini coefficient as Western Europe by eliminating the immigration and adopting Western European immigration policies. But then the question you would have to ask, did you make anyone better off? The numerical measure of inequality will now be the same as France or Germany. But you didn't make any of those people better off by forcing them to stay in their village in Mexico or Honduras, where life was very, very hard. They went to the United States for a reason, because you can multiply your income 10 times by walking across the